big round of applause for them for coming, everyone.
You know what? This feels weird. What if I move this over here? Is that okay? Is that okay for you? All right. So thank you so much for coming. Sorry for the technical problems. Luckily, my family's here to help sort that out. So yeah, I'm an art teacher and an artist, and I'm excited to talk to you about Task and some of my work and just my teaching practice and how it all kind of blends together. So the way I've structured this talk tonight is I want to show you, first of all, I want to talk about utopia and ideas about like how, you know, we can make it a better world and things like that. And then and then what? And then Task, and then some of my paintings. And then if I have time, I actually threw on some more paintings of other painters that influenced me, and if nothing else, maybe you'll like their work too. So we'll start here. I guess my wife is going to click through. So Yinka Shonibare MBE, has anyone heard of him? He's an artist he was born in Nigeria, but now he's working in London, I think. And he deals with big ideas. So his art, contemporary artist, by the way, this thing we're looking at here is called Scramble for Africa. Basically, he bases his work on specific events or novels or artworks or something from history, and then kind of re-describes it or reinterprets it and then makes his. So this particular one is based off of a meeting that happened in 1880 something, and it was all the leaders of Europe got together to decide who gets what part of Africa, basically. And they met up and just said, okay, Italy, you take this one, and France will take over here, and so on. So, and he's, you know, African by birth, and so he interprets that as like, it's stupid, that's crazy, you know? And it would never happen like that today, and we hope, and anyway, so he has these mindless men sitting around a table with this map of Africa. So, you know, literally, he just chops their heads off, but he makes all the stuff. And anyway, so he kind of approaches these big ideas of race and class and injustice and things like that, but through thinking about utopian ways of. So go ahead and play that video. Let's see if that'll work. Can you make it full screen? This is a short video. It's like 2 minutes.
You've got to be a bit utopian to be an artist, because it's not a very realistic occupation. The thought of being an artist in itself, I think, is a utopian idea, because I don't really make anything useful. And I think that that in and of itself is an illustration of my own disposition. Half the time, actually, I don't believe that I am doing what I'm doing. I'm realizing my dreams, and that somehow is also my profession. There is no line between the kind of personal and the professional. And so, in a way, I feel very kind of lucky in a way that I can do that. I can realize my utopian dreams and still survive through doing that.
I think that's it. All right, you might have to pause it. Okay. So, I mean, here he's talking about, it's kind of interesting, right? Like being an artist is not really useful, you know, or it's not a useful occupation. Yet he still has these, you know, strivings for a utopian kind of way of life, and how he considers himself lucky that he can actually do both, have a personal life of things he cares about, but also that's how he makes his living. And I think it's interesting because this meeting kind of revolves around these ideas of creativity, but also how do you make money at it, and so my take is very different. I'm not a CEO of any kind of corporation, and I have kind of a unique way to think about, utopia and art and how all these things kind of mix into my life. So can you click to the next one? See if it'll work. It's kind of goofy with YouTube videos in there. There we go. So this is one of the best books I've read all summer. I'm doing my doctoral work at Concordia University in Montreal, and I've been reading a lot about complexity thinking, but also just ways of redescription and ways to. Richard Rorty is a neo-pragmatist, so that means he believes the best way to kind of move forward and do something useful is to tear down the existing systems that have been, kind of oppressing the way we do things for a long time. So I love this. And by the way, I think utopia as an idea is something we could all spend more time doing, right? It's a good thing to kind of visualize and think about how, we can make the world a better place, maybe. And anyway, so he says, in my utopia, human solidarity would be seen as a goal to be achieved. It is to be achieved not by inquiry, but by imagination, and the imaginative ability to see strange people as fellow sufferers. And I really like that quote. I think that's beautiful. And then he says, this is what is really cool about this, because he's a philosopher kind of by trade, but look at this, what he's claiming here. This is in the introduction of his book, which is great. He says, this is a task not for theory, not for people sitting around reading and thinking about how to make the world a better place, but for genres such as ethnography, the journalist report, the comic book, the docudrama, and especially the novel. So he's saying that through creative action and imaginative action, that's how we're going to realize any kind of utopia, which is pretty interesting because he wrote this in 1987. I'd love to see what he thinks now of the world. I think he's passed, but yeah, go to the next one. Let's see. So I wanted to talk, just kind of paint a picture. A lot of us like to think about and talk about creativity in different terms, and there's a lot of ways to kind of take it up, and it's a very complex issue anyway. But this idea with complexity, if you think of a complex system, such as a school of fish or a flock of birds or a hive of bees or something, they all kind of function like they work without any kind of leader telling them what to do, and they sort of pick up on each other's cues and just kind of decide how to move, or how to act, or who needs to do what, or where are we going, and it just kind of happens as a collective entity instead of, like the traditional kind of models that we have. Now, if we take it to a human scale, a complex system could be like all of us in this room right now, and we all kind of act according to our own desires and selfish maybe even, but yet we're connected with each other and influenced by each other, and our actions and behaviors kind of depend on other people. And so anyway, this idea of a complex system, and especially one that flourishes, is able to scout out possible responses to a situation and then choose the appropriate response. So basically like improvising, or if you take it to this guy, by the way, that first book, this other best book I've read all year. And then this one is more accessible. It's not as, these ones are kind of theoretical and heavy, but this one, Stephen Johnson, he's more accessible. He has a lot of ideas about, I think he's got podcasts and things. He actually just has I just saw this week he has a new Netflix series too, where he explains phenomena from the world. But he talks about this idea of the adjacent possible. So it's similar to this. It's like this kind of a shadow future hovering on the edges of the present state of things, a map of all the ways the present can reinvent itself. So if we think about creativity in terms of this like expanding territory, that maybe the stuff that's already been explored is not that exciting. In fact, go to the next one. There's a couple more quick quotes. These are fun too. John Cleese has this really great talk on creativity. Has anyone seen that on YouTube? Go look it up if you haven't. It's like 35 minutes long, and he's John Cleese, so he's really funny, and he really dissects the whole thing and gives his take on creativity. And I like this especially. He talks about how creative people, it's not just some magical power that is bestowed upon certain people and not on others. He says creative people have the ability to tolerate uncertainty or discomfort or anxiety that usually comes with like a deadline, or he even talks about like if it's possible you just push that deadline as far away as you can and then workshop it, brainstorm until that date, and just you might come up with a better solution the more uncertain time you have with it. He also talks about open mode and closed mode of creativity. So the open mode is sort of like free-flowing, anything like brainstorming time where there's no bad answers and you just kind of, you dive into it. And then once you kind of land on a direction, then you get to the closed mode and you have to execute it kind of. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And then Oliver Herring, so I want to talk about him. He's an artist out of New York, and he talks about this idea that everyone is a creative agent, but he makes a distinction. He says, but not everyone is an artist or should be an artist. And I think that's interesting. We all kind of have the ability to be creative, but anyway, I agree with him. And I think that really kind of lines up with my sort of ethos as a teacher, that I'm at a public school, and of course not every kid that comes into my class is going to be a professional artist or anything, but I do want them to be able to access their creativity and engage with things and problems and make them kind of anxious and uncomfortable and stuff. That's my job. And then I love this too. He talks about you need time to burn through cliches. So again, it's sort of that like scouting possible responses, I think, or that's what I tie it to, and just like, you come up with an idea to paint or sculpt or whatever you do, and it might be too easy or too familiar, and it feels like a cliche. I'm sure some of us have felt that way before. And he says you just need time, and you just burn through it, and eventually you'll get to new territory where you're doing things that have never been done before, and that's when things get exciting because it's unpredictable. And so that's what I love. That's that open mode kind of state of things where it's anything is possible. So go to the next thing. So task. How many of you know what task is before I start explaining it? A couple of you do. That's good. So basically, I'll tell you what. Let's watch another video, and he can explain it. This is a task that he did in Madison Square Park in New York City last year, about this time, September, I think. So 13 months ago. This will give you a sense of one task party. Okay? It's about 5 minutes.
Childhood game. I need some people.
Rank the lyrics of your favorite song by name textures.
Have to do this to 30 people. You put up the signs earlier, right? You're volunteer. Thank you. Sure.
The way people interact with each other socially tends to be very prescribed. And with task, you use this little directive, and you go over to that person and you engage that person, and he or she is not going to question that because that's very much part of the structure. So suddenly you engage with a whole lot of people that you wouldn't ordinarily.
My task was to pop up out of the box and scare people.
We were throwing a serious curveball with the weather, so we're running way behind.
I came up with task in 2002. I think the first task was only 10 people, and then the structures shifted slightly to an entirely open structure where anybody could participate. The most important thing that I got from that first iteration was that those people really invested themselves so much into the structure that it became a cathartic experience. Everyone is a creative agent, so independent of what your interests are, you can bring that to the table.
Just trying to figure out where everything's supposed to go. If you want to bring tape back in here, great, but I think we need to have piles that draw people out.
You want materials there to present an environment that seems generous, where at first you don't feel so intimidated to immediately have to break social barriers. This is going to be the first public task party in an iconic, centrally located public park. So it's open to anybody.
do me a favor, have fun, throw yourself into the mix, write tasks, because you guys know better than the general public can come and say in here how to do this. And we're gonna have fun. It's gonna be the best task party yet. Okay, guys.
So it's an entirely self-perpetuating thing.
We've been recruited to be tied together to get 20 people. Just for 5 minutes if you're ready. I think it's been about 2.
My task was to do a pinball machine, and my mom helped me with it a little bit. I met a guy named Daniel, and we talked about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and Sweeney Todd, and the book my dad wrote. Is that a Ziva?
I was actually on my way to a restaurant and I saw some people enjoying themselves, so I stopped by and I was in 1 hour already. I'm late for dinner. I've participated in some other people's tasks already. It's been fun.
It can be interpreted however you want. The tools are your imagination, and your imagination is limitless.
I had to run up to people and ask them to play with me. So I played Red Rover and we played that in over a decade.
My task is to find other people to attach tasks to me.
So much art is metaphor and simulation, or aesthetics. Part of the value of task is not to invest into anything permanent, to really celebrate the moment, the fluidity of creative action.
I'm completely wiped out, but actually really happy. I just got a garden, a beautiful garden that somebody made. You really did it?
Yeah, I've just been taking a tour right now. Yeah. There's some kids that are invisible.
I've been to a lot of task parties, but I think this was probably one of the most positive ones I've been to.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen anything. They're invisible.
You know, it's just always great to see little kids interact with older people, artists interact with complete non-artists. A lot of people, they like art, they like the idea of art, they want to be connected to it, but they don't really have access points. So tasks can be that, I think. It's important to a lot of people that this is art and not just a party. This kid who came up to me, I think he had to turn himself into a fog and then hug a guy in a white shirt. And I was the lucky beneficiary of that. I really enjoyed that because it broke a wall. To actually overlap like that with strangers is rare, I think. And that's why I think that's in part why people sort of exploded into this so nicely.
Okay. So that's gives you a taste of it. It's exciting, right? So yeah, I don't even know if you have a question, let me know. But let's see. Yeah, we're okay. I still got to show you more stuff. But there's this is a task party I helped set up with Oliver in Montreal last year, and this gives you a sense of like what it looks like. Well, you saw from the video too. It's pretty exciting. There's all this stuff happening, and no one's really in control, sort of. And everyone's like dictating other tasks and interpreting tasks. And you know, you could spend as long as 3 seconds or an hour on a task, depending what it is. It's up to you how you want to interpret it. And a lot of them start to overlap, and you know, people get involved with each other's tasks, and it just goes on and on. So you write down a task, you put it in the bucket. When you put one in, you take another one out, and you just have to do whatever it says. That's the basic rule. But then it just kind of, you know, unfolds into this chaotic mess where nothing is meant to be permanent. You know, it's like he said, it's just all about the fluidity of creative action. You're just engaged with it. I like to think of it as kind of like So we talk about the open mode and closed mode. This is like open mode, but for 3 hours straight, and it's like CrossFit for your creativity muscles, you know? It's like intense, but it's fun. Yeah, here's another picture from that task party. That's me. It started as build a fort, and then I don't remember, it was a procession of some kind. I was in the fort. Someone else built it because my arms were stuck. So anyway, let's see, keep going. Yeah, all kinds of crazy stuff. I love this photo on the left. It's just like this foil-suited people were doing a mock wedding, and then people threw this confetti, and then there was a whole fashion show that emerged, and that lasted like 40 minutes, and anyway, let's keep going. Yeah, a kissing booth, which is exciting with strangers, right? And then this mother and her child were there, so I love that. She's becoming a unicorn or something, and it's just like open to anyone, and it's very playful and fun. Okay. Oh, that's me again. Yeah, that was shredded paper's fun on those things. Okay, let's go. This is one Oliver just did. This is the aftermath of one he just did in St. Louis like last week. Okay, yeah? Good question. I know, do all of us kind of have these like cleaning tendencies that you're going crazy a little bit, just seeing these pictures? You'd be surprised actually, same with this kind of idea of the collective and the complex entity, like it doesn't take that long to clean up. You wouldn't believe, I've done this with several groups, and you just kind of, in fact, sometimes people start, near the end, they start writing tasks like, put the tape all back where it goes, and people get those tasks and start cleaning up, and it's just like, no one's doing it. Yeah, okay, let's keep going. So, this is exciting. We are gonna host a task party here in Utah. Yeah, I know. So Oliver is flying, with Oliver, like anyone can do a task party. You can do it with, I've done it with my family. It's actually really a family reunion. It was quite the party. But this is going to be big. We're inviting, part of Oliver's visit, he's going to be going to a lot of, like 6 high schools, UVU, BYU. He's giving other talks around. He's going to be here for a week and a half, but his culminating event, at the end of his trip, we're going to throw this big task party. And unfortunately, this is the crazy news. As of yesterday, we've been planning this for like 4 or 5 months, and we had a venue reserved at UVU, and everything was looking good. And yesterday, UVU said, oh, you can't have that room. And so now we're kind of like, uh-oh. But I've had a stressful 24 hours, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be it's going to be in Mapleton at this old gym, which will be cool. It's next to Mapleton Park. It's the address is 90 East Maple Drive, I think, or Maple, what's it called, Becca? Maple something? Maple Street? It's the main road in Mapleton. Anyway, just drive towards the mountains. You'll see a big park, and then there's this, it's called the Memorial Veterans Memorial Rec Center or something. But it's just an old gym, and they use it mostly for wrestling. But we do have that reserved. So anyway, that's probably where it's going to be. But just in case, we've created a task event, just barely. And so follow that and invite your friends. It's a public thing. This is a free event. It's a perfect date night. It's going to be a good way to get to know everyone. And so anyway, details about the location will be forthcoming probably by tomorrow. I just have to check with a few people before we officially pull the trigger. I was hoping to have it nailed down for sure right now. There's a chance it might be at UVU, just in a different place, but probably in Mapleton, okay? So how many of you think you're going to come to this? Yeah, good. I hope so, and I hope you can invite your friends and spread the word, because Oliver's going to be here, and he takes these things very seriously. This is his livelihood, and he does a good job, and so, yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about, and then this is kind of another similar but different branch of his practice that he's done with me and some of my students and other people, but he calls it Areas for Action. This is me and some of my students in the Park Avenue Armory in New York earlier this year. And again, he has people, so that's one of my darling students. She was an exchange student from Denmark. Denmark? Yeah. And anyway, she had to sit there for an hour while we draped foil all over her. And yeah, she didn't feel good, but anyway, and there's a couple other shots of these type of foil things. Those are people under there. They're connected by foil. This is a recent one he just did in China. He travels all over the world. and does these things. Now, here's where I come to it, and I kind of, in my realm of teaching, I like to do tasks with my students in the classroom on the first day of school. And it's usually, you remember the first day of school in high school? It's kind of an awkward time, and everyone's checking each other out, and who can I flirt with, and, all these, like, things you're worried about, and anyway. So I like to open it up, and I tell them the task rules, and we get started. And yeah, so this is just a few things you can kind of read through here. And I will say, I won't go through each of them, but for me personally, this number 4, see that where there's all these hands touching my beard? I'd grown out my beard all summer, so I came back to school, and it was a novelty, and everyone was excited. So anyway, someone wrote a task like, get someone, I like this, it was, get 5 other people to touch the teacher's beard with you, because no one would just do it themselves. So here's the thing about me, there's a little personal thing. In my teaching career, I've taught now for 9 years. My first few years, I was kind of a control freak, and the cleanup instinct was very prevalent in my head. So I was the teacher that was kind of like, shut down, shut up, hold still, like, don't make a mess, like, which sounds weird for an art teacher. But this moment right here was kind of one of those, like, that put me on edge, to have a kid, 5 kids, like, touch me, and here it is, like, I got a picture of it, and I like that picture, because that, for me, represents kind of a switch in my whole pedagogy and my whole way of approaching students and thinking about setting up my teaching environment, my classroom, as a more organic kind of thing instead of so structured. But anyway, you can get a sense of, like, what kids do. Oh, can you read that number 5? It says, step on someone's foot and then look them in the eye and apologize. I just thought that was funny. So some of the stuff that kids come up with, I'll be honest, the first 5 minutes are really awkward. Then the next 5 minutes, you see a lot of cliches. You see a lot of, like, but you need that time to kind of burn through those cliches. And, and then everyone's kind of, what is going on? And then it just takes one brave soul to, like, get up and start singing Mary Had a Little Lamb or something. And then people are like, oh, anything goes here, kind of. And it's exciting, and it's a good way to start. So anyway, I've found that these, what's next? My paintings? Oh, yeah, I want to just talk about how I consider teaching as social art practice. And if any of you have functioned within a teaching capacity, you probably can appreciate the idea of teaching as an art form, right? And there's little nuances that you have to kind of pick up and to be an effective teacher, maybe. But yeah, I mean, socially engaged art, or relational aesthetics, or as it's kind of known in the art world, is kind of a hot thing right now, but I think it really is compatible with teaching. And so I like that. Here's a group hug forming. Let's see what's next. Same kind of thing here. Here's some other ones. I bet you can't guess what that middle task was. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, not to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
Maybe we can cover this later. I was just going to ask, how organic is your classroom? Like, how much do you just let it go, and how much do you reel it?
That's a great question. Some of my old students are here. They could probably answer better than that. But I mean, compared to my first 2 years, it's a lot more organic. But I don't know. It's always kind of in flux, and you do need structure. And I'm not saying to just abandon that, but yeah, that's a good question that I could probably talk about for a long time. But for the sake of time, let's keep going. Wait, go back to that one. I want you to guess that middle task. No, it was make a French blockade. So I don't know, I just thought that was funny. And then, yeah, I don't even know if the colors are right or in the right order, and then this kid had to put a backpack on his head and walk around the classroom. Anyway, okay, so anyway, I think of this, going back to, like, those first ideas that I talked about of, exploring the new territory and looking for that adjacent possible. So I would, obviously snap a lot of pictures of these as they're happening, and the really interesting ones to me, I would turn into paintings. And so I brought a few today. And for example, this one was started as, like, make paper pants. So she's like, okay, she makes pants. And then people thought that was great, and so other students started writing tasks like, oh, put this on her, put this, and she just kind of stood there, and we all dressed her up. So she became like our paper mascot girl. She even got a cardboard briefcase. And I like that one. Wait, go back. I like that one too, for other reasons too. Like, as I'm painting it, I start going, oh, look how she's like wearing a mask and you can just see this glowing eye through the hole, which, is that one here? Oh, I didn't bring that. Oh yeah, it is back there. If you go see it in real life, it looks better, but yeah, I don't know, that idea of teenagers and masks and the way they have to operate, you know, behind, and they're not sure how to navigate this crazy, you know, school system and everywhere. Anyway, I like that. So anyway, the next one was just, the task was become someone's sunshine, which I thought was actually pretty beautiful and poetic. And I love how he interpreted it. It's just super childish and, you know, like put this dumb picture of a sun on his chest. And I just like that. I don't know. So I painted that. Okay. And then this one, Kiss a Stranger. I didn't bring this one, but same kind of thing, right? There was a lot of tasks that got written. First day of school, remember, it's very, you know, emotions are high. And yeah, someone said kiss a stranger. And lots of people were writing kissing tasks, but I didn't see anyone doing anything until this kid. And another reason I have to talk about this one is because this guy, you know, it was the first day of school, and I don't know my students, they don't know me, and I'm making assumptions about them, probably just the same way we all are. And this was a big, strong, handsome kid, and I assumed he was like not into art. The art's stupid, and I just want to go play ball or something, you know. And he got into this thing, and he gets this task, and instead of being embarrassed or shy, and in my, you know, I teach in Mapleton, Utah, so it's pretty conservative, and, you know, he was just like, kiss a stranger, okay. And he just went and found this girl. Luckily, she played along. I think she kind of enjoyed it. I don't know. But yeah, so I like that one. That breaks the social barrier, right? Okay. And then this one, approach with caution, handle with care. I don't know how they came together or why they taped those, but I just got a picture of them together, and I thought it was kind of a, you know, maybe heavy-handed a little, but it speaks to me as a teacher, you know, like if that's what they should teach you when you're learning to be a teacher. Just approach with caution, but handle with care. Anyway, and then this one I love. It was just, they wrote a giant piece of paper and stuffed it in the task box. Stick this to the teacher. And I like that language too, which kind of represents the shift in my own, you know, teaching style, and, you know, here, stick this to the teacher, and so that's me. Now this, then I moved away from these really big ones and started going a little smaller, and these are on canvas, but I'm trying gouache on canvas, which I don't know if you're supposed to do, but I like to try it. And so this one too is kind of interesting. I don't know, it reminds me of when I went out, I was doing a documentary, working on a student documentary of these kids on the Indian reservation out in Roosevelt. And we went to a school, and there was a lady there, one of the elders from the Native community, that heard that there was this kid doing a documentary. She came to the school. She wanted to get on camera and tell her story a little bit. And so I interviewed her. And one of the things that I still remember from that is she says that one of the reasons that a lot of white people don't think that Native kids succeed is because of the culture, obviously, but specifically that in Native culture, especially on the reservation, I think more so, it's not okay to like raise your hand, and that was her, or call attention to yourself and try to get ahead. And she perceived that as that's how the white man's school is set up, and that's why her kids were not succeeding. And anyway, and I always remember that stuck out to me. And it's not just Native kids, because I have all kinds of shy kids, you know, and I just like this one because it's so simple. It was just, you know, here he is like standing in this imaginary, you know, like border, or what's the word I'm trying to say? What? Yeah, container, yeah. And I know that kid, he's a great kid. I really like, I had him for 3 years. He's very cool. Okay, anyway, and this one was my latest one. This was just like, started with just like dress up a girl or adorn her or something, yeah. Anyway, I just like that black and white dress she was wearing. I wanted to paint it. What else? This was a different thing. This wasn't a task party, but it was just a funny picture. The Orem Library had me come and do a little workshop with little kids. And for printmaking and mark making explorations, sometimes I've seen teachers do that with like marbles in a Frisbee. You put paper in it and roll it around and paint, and, you know, but these guys just did it with a pool and tennis balls, which it was just funny. And then it was really green. And then this one is over here. So I took a few of my students last year, or earlier this year, yeah, this February, out to New York, and we got to work with Oliver Herring in his studio, and he had all these photo photos of body parts, and we just like cut them out and tape them to each other, and he was taking pictures. And one of the things I really like about Oliver too is that as he's working with these kids, he would take the picture, but then he would show it to them and say, what about this? Because a lot of them would work for 5 minutes and kind of go, okay, I'm done. And he'd push them. He'd say, nah, okay, you've got this, but what else can you do? And pretty soon he's got, her hair in his mouth, and there's all these extra photos of hands, and you're kind of like, what am I looking at? And I like that. I like paintings where you kind of have to do a double take and reassess what you're perceiving, maybe. Okay. And again, here's a kid playing with photos of faces on his own face. It's just funny. And this one, yeah, same kind of thing. Okay. So this is the one I'm working on right now. This is my next one. I'm really excited about this one. This started as tape a kid to a wall and then make him into a Christmas tree and then give the Christmas tree man a girlfriend. And so they just started taping all these kids. It was fun. And then I love that it just says true love right there between them. Because they were taped and people were writing mean things like sucker on his forehead, and I guess that's kind of mean. I don't know. He was game though. I didn't feel like it was too bad. Okay. Yeah, and here's some other photos that you can just kind of see. That one was on the right, like make a package out of someone or something. So we're wrapping her up with her own hair. And then this kid was making a cool hat. Yeah, this year I used those ball pit balls, which was fun. I just threw those in there. Yeah, there's some more. Okay, let's keep going. And then, I've had this kind of imagery happening in my paintings like the last 5 years. I went through a whole phase where I did all these elk, and as a Utah state animal, sort of like a self-portrait. I'm like, oh, I'm an animal from Utah. So I would just make all these, and I did that for like 3 years. I was really into all these elk images, and I started putting these weird cubic patterns in them. But then I don't really even know why I'm doing it still, but there's something to it, and I just keep doing it. So, yeah, even in these ones that I'm going to give away, there's little bits of that. So it lingers. And anyway, so I started trying this with my new projects of like painting my students, because I got to a place where I didn't want to be so self-referential. I felt like those elk paintings, I know it sounds silly, but they were too personal, and I wanted to do work about other people. So that's why I've been doing this. So here's a couple other things, just my first gouache experiments where I'd project these things over students and then have their faces taped a little bit. Because I think there's something kind of sad and beautiful about these bounded students that are kind of almost like victims, I see them every day. I kind of feel bad for them sometimes, but anyway, keep going. There's another one. There's one more. Okay. And then, yeah. Okay, are there any questions right now? I'm going to show some more artists. Yeah? Yeah, are you asking, does it freak you out as a teacher to do tasks like, do you think someone's going to die or do something wildly inappropriate? Yeah, so one example is in a task party, someone wrote, kill the teacher. And luckily, the way that it was interpreted was the kid, because the kid just pulls it and he's like, I'm not going to stab my teacher. So he just taped a piece of paper to me that says, you've been killed. It's really interesting because Oliver addressed that. When I first learned about task, I was kind of like, my first impression was, yeah, that's cool, but that would never work in my classroom, right? I was in control freak mode a little bit. And one thing that Oliver said to us, a bunch of teachers that were learning about it for the first time, was if you give people, not just kids, but anyone, if you give them the freedom to step outside the lines, most of them won't, but it's empowering to know that they could. And I've seen that time and time again. I've done these task parties like with all of my classes for the last 3 or 4 years. I've thrown, dozens of task parties, and I've never had an issue where anyone gets hurt or it becomes wildly out of control. Because usually that amount of freedom given to them all at once is like a little shocking. And so it's never been a big issue with me. I can't think of an issue, which is strange. And Oliver's done this with different populations. He's done it with prisoners and youth that have been detained for whatever reason. And he says the same thing. Rarely will you have anyone get hurt. Yeah? Yeah, so for my classroom, yeah, I adapted a little bit. So for example, I don't use paint on the first day because I don't want paint getting everywhere. So I'll just use cardboard and paper and markers and pencils and just cheap materials that can be used up. And yeah, so and then I'll tell them like, you have to stay in this room, little rules, but not too many rules. And I actually don't prescribe the tasks. I don't tell them, I don't really even give them examples too much. I just kind of let them figure it out. And yeah. Any other questions? Or should we look at some painters? Okay, let's look at some painters and photographers. So this painter is really influential to me because he's out of Brooklyn as well. What's cool about his work, he sets up the situations that he paints. So he considers himself like a community activist, a local kind of, he's not a politician, although I've heard that the politicians are trying to get him to run for office, but he's like, no, I just want to help my community. So he organizes like block parties. He helps build playgrounds in his neighborhood, sets up meetings to fight against the big condo making people in his neighborhood. He's in near Park Slope in Brooklyn, if you know about that. It's a very ritzy, up and coming. But when they moved in, it was not that case, like 30 years ago. So anyway, so here he is like at a press conference. So he set this up, this actual event, and then he takes photos of it. So this has been really influential to me of this, and then he paints it. And a lot of them are gouache. That's a huge gouache painting of all these cameras, like with the flash on the camera. I love that. I don't know. And then, yeah, so he paints that. Or the next one, yeah, this is just a small one. So from his block party, he has face painting stations, and then he paints those faces, which I just look at this painting. I don't know if any of you are gouache people, but I just love that, how it's so clean and fresh, and yet there are parts of it that are kind of blended and muddied together, like on his cheeks, but other parts are very sectioned off, and I like that about gouache because you can kind of mess with that, and that's kind of what I've been influenced by. And this is an oil painting, but it's really big, and it's called Some Letters Have to Be Written, but Are Best Not Sent, and it's just this kind of blurry picture of his laptop after writing some kind of letter. So he sent some internal stuff going on there, but it's a cool thing, I think. Okay, what's next? Oh, Lucas Blaylock is a really cool photographer. He works with and you should look him up. There's some great videos about him. One just came out like last week or two, maybe a month ago. But he, just is taking images. He'll start with like stuff at the dollar store, I relate to these really low budget art making things. So he'll just that's a picture of, that's like a cardboard cutout of bananas on a banana hanger thing, and he just swings it and then snaps his photo with his medium format camera. Or this one, he's just using really rudimentary Photoshop tools and just in a goofy kind of way. I just like that. I don't know. So, and then this lady, I don't know much about her, but I just came across her website and I love her work. You kind of look at this and you're not sure what you're looking at. I mean, you can kind of see, yeah, it's a bunch of bills folded up and placed, and there's this weird background, but the background and the foreground kind of blend together and the lines intersect in weird ways, and I just like that. It's sort of that double take of what am I looking at? And then here's another one of hers. I think that's a digital thing. It's just, I don't know, it's kind of elegant. And then this is a German guy, I can't say his name right, but Florian Marie Aschien, and he's doing mostly digital photos, but then, or not digital, I think they're traditional photos, but he, plays with them and manipulates the imagery, just more subtly, but show the next one. Yeah, kind of plays with the colors and stuff. And they're beautiful, they're big photographs. And then this guy, Peter Doig, he's a painter out of, I forget where he is. There was a big show, when we lived in Canada, there was a big show of his in their big museum. And yeah, I didn't know he was that big, and I looked this up, and this painting is worth $7 million. It just sold last year for $7 million. But he goes to, just this idea of scoping out the landscape and painting those different sections. I don't know, I like that. And then what else? Oh, Hervin Anderson's another kind of cool painter, the way he just deals with spaces and the psychology of, fences. And he does these things like that are welcoming, but at the same time restricting or pushing you away. Like this one too is another gate, but as an image, I love that. I don't know. And then here's another one from a barber shop. I just love how parts of his painting, he's those ceiling lines are so clean, but then down on the floor it's kind of like drippy and stuff. I just like that. And then I was trying some new stuff. So I don't know, I might give up on these student ones. I just ride these waves as long as I can. Like the elk thing went for a while, and then I'm like, now I'm doing this. And I kind of started playing with this. So I don't know if you can even tell what this starts as, but I have this, well, that's my son, Lincoln, and he's under a bunch of foil. So I just started putting foil on him, and I thought he would get bored with this. And we were taking photos of him and projecting this cubic thing all over him. And then I thought he was going to burn out and say, this is dumb. And then he's like, no, let's keep going. And I said, okay, well. And so I started like licking little mini marshmallows and sticking them to him, He's my son, I can do that. And so you can see kind of the bottom, there's his arm with marshmallow. I don't know if you can even see his face. Oh yeah, it's so like, yeah, point at it. There's that's his face, that's his eye. Anyway, so I don't know, playing with things digitally is kind of exciting too, but is that it? I think that's it. So there's my references, and anyway, so that's my little talk. Are there any questions or comments or? Okay, I guess we're done. Thanks. Oh, there are comments. Okay, we'll start here.
Do you, for those of us who are attending the task party, do you want us to bring any supplies?
Oh, you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up. The thing about task parties is the one kind of rule that Oliver has with his name associated to the whole thing is he doesn't want it to become a corporatized thing. So we could rely on sponsors and tell them about this cool thing, but he kind of likes to keep it like a grassroots movement. So we depend on volunteers, and we depend on like people offering Christmas lights. If you have Christmas lights you can bring, that would be great. Just message me or something if you think you have something like that, or shredded paper or cardboard or tape. And yes, that would be awesome, because really we're operating on a shoestring budget. We have hardly any money. All the money we've raised is helping to pay for him plane ticket and stuff. He's like, I feel bad. I wish we could give him more money for his time, but he's so generous, and he's coming out here and willing to just work with us. And I've got a bunch of students that are volunteering, and if any of you would like to volunteer, let me know. We'd be happy to have you help us. Were you next? Okay.
So how do you feel like tasks help your students as artists, like beyond just the one event? How do you see it in your classroom?
I hope, I don't know this, because from the perspective of a student, I'm not totally sure, but I think it sort of expands the possibilities and the ontology of what art is, just like their conception of how they approach it. If they have this kind of idea that art is like still life studies of flowers, drawn in pencil on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, then that's kind of lame, and I don't want them to just think that's all that art is. So this idea, I feel like it expands their range and lets them kind of experience it and see it as something bigger and something that could be fluid. We talk about it afterwards as a task party an artwork. How could that be art? And so this whole idea of maybe performance, process-focused art, all these kind of aspects that kind of are different than the traditional ways of thinking and looking at art, thinking about and looking at art, kind of, I think, feed into that whole organic kind of atmosphere that I'm trying to strive for anyway. And so I think it's become really compatible with my whole approach to teaching. And I don't know, it probably doesn't reach everyone. Like, I doubt it's 100% effective all the time, but nothing you do when you're a teacher is. So, but I do feel like it reaches, it's successful, I feel like. Did you have a question?
So you kind of answered this, but how, to me, art that's in the public realm like this is interesting. People interacting, that seems like a super important facet of art. Like art that people don't see or experience, is it really art?
Yeah.
So I think this is so cool, but my question is, how does he make money?
Yeah.
You're paying him to come, but me as an
Well, it's not me, it's, yeah.
these things, or events like this,
Yeah.
people know you're paying me to do that.
I mean, I couldn't really talk to that in too much detail because I don't know a lot, but I know that he gives workshops, flies around, people fly him out to do these kind of workshops, and he actually just did a a course at Harvard for the educational school. What's that big Project Zero thing? And he was like a guest lecturer, and yeah, he's very smart, and he's found ways to make money. I don't know. I don't know, but it's a good question, you know. Someone else have a question? Yeah, Ray?
Soda cans and drink bottles and transmission parts. I didn't notice those so much. In other words, it's all graphics.
It's
pretty much.
Graphics. What do you mean?
Tape the paper down and draw on it. You know, that's.
Yeah, it's like cheap materials.
Except for transmission parts.
Okay.
They're old hubcaps off the road.
Are you offering to bring some?
There's some opportunities out there, you know.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's funny because. Yeah. Well, it really depends. So when you set up a task party, participating in a task party is one thing, and that's super fun, and that's what I hope you guys will come and do. But setting it up is like a whole different beast that takes a lot of time. And when you're setting it up, those different ingredients that you kind of put in really, affect the outcome. So like just this year, just like last month, I tried the ball pit balls, and oh my gosh, I thought, back to your question about, oh man, these are going to turn into dangerous projectiles. I only had to kind of get after one kid, and I was like, hey, because he was throwing them at people who weren't paying attention. So, but out of like 150 kids, only one that I had to kind of get after. It was exciting. I mean, they were dumping them everywhere and tossing them, juggling them, doing stuff, and I was okay with that. But yeah, so yeah, the ingredients kind of depend. And this task party in Utah is going to be unique. So whatever we can bring to it will affect how it goes and the way we interact with each other and stuff. Yeah.
I would tend to think that you wouldn't want heavy, like car parts in case people drop them on other people or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
That are maybe lightweight.
Yeah, and disposable usually. Because afterwards, we do have to clean up. But you'd be surprised. Like I said, if we kind of say, all right, it's wrapping up, we turn the lights on, it's impressive how many people just stick around, and because they just feel so like rejuvenated and connected to all these people, and it's like they're happy to just help clean up, and it takes a matter of minutes, really. It's crazy how fast it goes, I think. Yeah?
So I have a question about Oliver here. He's going to be speaking at you, he said?
Yes, and if you want to come listen to him, he's going to talk about his practice, which is very wide. Like I've just shown you like task and areas for action a little bit, but he does all these other things too. And if you want to learn more about him, there's an Art 21 video about him where it shows his early work where he would knit these ribbons together for like 8 to 12 hours a day for 10 years. And it's incredible. And then he does these videos, and a lot of it is kind of like photo shoots and videos and talking people into stuff, like within their comfort zone. But he's actually done a photo shoot with me, which I could tell you about later, but it was kind of crazy. Like he pushed my limits of physical and mental comfort. Basically, we were on a stairwell, and he was just like, hold there, and I was just staying there, and he was just happy to keep taking pictures of me, and I had to be the one to finally say, like, my leg's gonna fall off, like, I gotta take a break, and he's like, okay, And then I went up and laid down, and he just kept taking pictures of me, and then the next thing I knew, I woke up, because I had fallen asleep. I was so exhausted, and I was like, and he's just taking photos of me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I fell asleep. He's like, it's okay, it's not the first time. And he does this with lots of people, with strangers, with friends. He's interested in kind of just seeing what you're willing to do and to push your boundaries a little bit, and that's kind of what Task does too. Yeah, Brittany.
So you talked a little bit about pushing through the cliches, and that's when creativity opens up, and that's what the task parties do. How can we put that on a smaller scale as we get into the studio and are trying to work through ideas? You can sketch out idea after idea, but have you experienced any like quick short versions of tasks that you can do on your own on a daily basis to get your mind in the same mindset?
I don't know. That's a really good question. Yeah? Do you have an answer?
Well, I don't know if it's an answer, but it seems to me that it's kind of a, what if I do this? What if I try to kind of a thing? As artists, we do that a lot.
That's actually one of the biggest challenges I have in teaching my AP kids, the ones that are supposed to be the advanced ones. And to get them to think of their projects as experiments instead of as precious products that are going to someday be famous and worth money, and to just get that stuff out of their head and just say, hey, try this. What happens if you do this? There's an art teacher in Illinois somewhere, and he'll do things where he makes 120 collages in 1 hour. So 30 seconds a collage, and he just has to go really fast. And most of them are duds, but he's trying stuff out. I think one suggestion I would say is give yourself constraints, because the more constraints you have, that might sound counterintuitive, but it forces you to have to be more creative within those constraints. And I think that's a healthy thing to do. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
And she alphabetizes them, and so on a given day she'll just pick a letter, and she has to find a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
Something like that,
Yeah.
create some structure.
Yeah, you need structure. I think you totally need structure, and those constraints can provide that. But then also, it might take you in a weird way that you're not expecting. I actually.
It's more like she paints from pictures, not I'm seeing what my creativity.
Oh, okay.
Are you thinking push your own boundaries kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a little project with my kids once in a while. I call it the wheel of juxtaposition, and it's just like a cheap little wheel, and you spin it, and it's got 30 numbers on it, and I just have, before we spin it, we come up with a list of just 30 things, and then you have to come up and just spin it twice and make an image out of those 2 things, whatever you landed on, and just sort of try it out, and it's silly, and it's not precious, and it's just like an experiment. I don't know. That's one thing. There's lots of ideas. I don't know.